You're listening to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. Before we get started, make sure you check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Range Minded Podcast. And if you have a question for us or anything you want to let us know, check us out. Email us, podcast@iishooting.com. One more thing, if you leave us some feedback from wherever you get your podcast from, that would really help us out a lot as well. This is episode number 84 of Range Minded, where we talk about the commitment to carrying. Not just the mental, but also the physical of what you're going to wear, the situations you get into every day, planning your life around carrying a firearm. It's a really serious thing to think about, and we try to dive into as many different aspects of that as we can. Thanks for listening, as always, and we hope you enjoy episode 84 of Range Minded, The Commitment to Carrying. Hello and welcome to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. My name is Mark Long, and as always, I am joined by
Steve Zimmerman, all the way across the state.
From all the way on the other side of the state where the internet is slow.
It is slow for some stinking reason.
Well, that happens.
I think it's my internet. I'm pretty sure it's my internet provider, and they just make me mad.
Well, I think what Idaho has like the worst.
What do you do?
Idaho has like the worst internet speed in the whole country, I think.
Is that an actual, like, a reality?
I think so. It's some of the worst. I remember looking it up once.
Well, in my case, it definitely is a true, not just hyperbole.
Well, I appreciate it anyway. We make the best of what we can, so.
Heck yeah.
But we're not going to talk about internet speeds today. We're going to talk about carrying.
Yeah, oddly enough. I mean, that's kind of why we're here, is to talk about gun stuff. So internet doesn't always fall in there. Though I do watch or use the internet to watch a lot of gun videos.
Yeah, there's that. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of opinions on carrying on the internet too. So I guess it all comes full circle.
It does.
So
and that's kind of what where we're going to go with it today. Like I don't know. And I kind of brought this up to Mark a few days ago. I was talking to a kid at work, kid I work with, I guess. And I asked him, well, what would you want to, what's a topic you'd be interested in? And he rattled off a few topics, some of which that we've already talked about, which tells me that he doesn't listen to the podcast.
Well, you should have chastised him then.
Oh, I may have. But he did bring up one thing about, and it's something I've been thinking about a little bit as well, is about just being committed to the carry and not just kind of get your license and shove it in the drawer, and not even use it. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. And then maybe even get down to some of the realities of what is out there. And I don't mean to make it sound like I'm trying to fear monger and get more people to carry guns. But I would like to see more people carrying guns, because I think it's a polite society is an armed society. So, and it's your
right to do so.
Yeah. Why not exercise that right?
Exactly. So yeah, we'll get into the nitty gritty of it a little bit. I kind of broke it up into kind of different categories.
Okay.
And, kind of from the beginning to your first time, carrying. But I think the first and foremost thing is that, you have to be, you have to understand the responsibility that you're about to take on if you decide to start concealed carrying.
Yeah. And to me, and I know we've talked about this a little bit before with the constitutional carry thing, it is a big deal to carry a gun. And I've seen people that have bought their first gun, when they get their concealed carry or even try to exercise constitutional carry. And to me, their attitude is either very nonchalant or it's beyond cavalier, to where they think they're going to be, saving people in gunfights. and at both ends of the spectrum, they kind of concern me.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Because it's the reality is statistically, we're probably not very likely to need to use a gun in self-defense, especially where we live now. Idaho is a pretty quiet state. I think violent crime is increasing nationwide, even though the statistics they reflect quite the opposite. But it seems like that there's more and more bad things happening. So if you're going to plan on carrying, then you need to really make that commitment to carry every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And, not only that, but stay trained and make sure your skills stay sharp. We've done a whole episode about how, gun handling and shooting is a depreciating skill. And even if you're carrying every day, but you don't go to the range and practice with it, you might not be able to have those skills at your disposal like you think you have.
Oh, yeah. And we've talked about it before, too, where we've seen professionals that carry guns every day that are less than stellar when it comes to usage and safety.
Yeah.
So it happens. It's a reality. And like you're saying, that's where the training is key and keeping up with those skills so you don't become a statistic on the news.
Yeah. So let's start at the very beginning, though. When you think that you want to carry, maybe you've shot a gun before, maybe you haven't shot a gun before, but you want to get a handgun for self-defense and a handgun to concealed carry with. Where do you think is the first place to start with that?
So hopefully you have some friends or some acquaintances, if I can talk, that are willing to take you shooting. I think even before the classes, I think it's important at least to know if it's for you.
Sure.
If it's something that you're not going to be too intimidated of. And I have talked to people, working ranges for as long as I have. I've met people where they shoot for the first time and it's like, no, this is not for me. I don't like it.
Yeah. And that,
which first of all,
too.
It blows my mind because it's so much fun, but it isn't for some people.
Yeah. 100%.
Honestly, we see that same kind of attitude in nature too, right? Some animals aren't violent. Some animals just are oblivious. Like we can use the sheep and the sheepdog analogy where there needs to be sheep in order to have a sheepdog.
Sure.
Maybe that sounds a little bit cruel and demeaning, but it's the reality.
Well, I think it comes down to a responsibility thing, and some people just aren't comfortable with the responsibility of carrying or the responsibility of owning a firearm. And I think there's a lot of respect to be had for somebody who tries it out and realizes maybe that it's not for them. It's not a mark against them, and by any means, I think.
No. And I guess that's a better way to put it, because I guess my way really sounded like, hey, they're just idiots that just want to die.
And that's not the case at all.
That is not the case. It might just not be for them. It might just be too much, and that's totally cool.
Yeah, and it might not even be. I was going to say it might not even be, that it's a permanent thing either. It might just be not the right time to start. And maybe, that sounds so terrible. Maybe something tragic happens in their lives to where the switch gets flipped and they say, all right, I got to get over this. I want to be safe. Or even not even tragic, but maybe just something, that happens or something that they see on the news or read about or anything could change their mind.
Sure. It kind of makes me think of when I was working on the range here in Idaho Falls, and this gal came in and she says, I need something for my daughter, some kind of something for defense. And I says, okay, well, what kind of firearm were you thinking? No. She says, I am not getting her a gun. I just need to see what you have for pepper spray or batons or something.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, well, why the hell did you even come to a gun store? That was my first, I didn't say it, right? But that was the first thought that came to my mind.
Yeah.
But then I thought, you know what, why wouldn't she come to a place like this? And so we went through and we walked through, various kinds of pepper spray and pepper gels, tasers and batons and canes. So we talked a lot about stuff. She ended up buying some pepper, the gel, which actually makes a lot more sense than just the spray.
Sure. In
my mind. Anyway, but she left hopefully with a little bit more knowledge. And I still kind of threw in maybe bring her in and see, maybe she needs a gun or something, just kind of, not because I wanted to sell, but maybe she needs something that's a little bit more of a permanent solution.
Well, and that's
as callous as that sounds.
Well, another interesting point it brings up too is that, you can't necessarily make your like a self-defense choice for somebody else, even if they are your daughter, your son, your significant other, your mother, your father. You know what I mean? It's really up to the person themselves. But I think the intent was there. The heart's in the right place.
She wanted to keep her daughter safe.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, she wanted to keep her daughter safe. And maybe she knows her daughter better than I do. And maybe her daughter is not ready to own a firearm. She might be like one of those folks that we talked about just a few minutes ago, where it is not for her.
Right.
And the mother, in her wisdom, at least got her daughter something.
Yeah, and something is better than nothing. I mean, we've done, because that kind of leads me to another point, is that, when you do carry, you have to be willing and able and comfortable with the fact that you may have to take a life to save your own or your family's. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry, keep going.
The fact that maybe you're not there's nothing, that's not a bag against you or anything like that.
No.
But there are less lethal options to consider. We've done an episode or two on less lethal and carrying those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Which is totally a great option, because, and I'll get to it more a little bit later, but you can't carry a gun everywhere. So
true. That's another true statement. So I think for that the number one thing is to first find a range, or preferably find somebody, a friend or somebody that that responsibly uses firearms. Go to them first and see if they'll take you shooting. I guarantee if they're a true fan of shooting, they would love to take you shooting.
Oh yeah. And I have a firsthand experience of this. If you haven't heard our episode with my friend Daniel, who had never shot a gun before, and we took him shooting and we kind of put him through, not the ringer, but we put him through all kinds of guns, and he loved it. And it was interesting, about 3 weeks ago, I want to say, he came up to me at work and he's like, "Man, I want to go shooting again. Can you take me shooting again?" And I said, "Yeah, let's go." And so we went and shot a couple more guns, took out an AK and a shotgun, which is what he was really interested in. And he had a blast. And then, I kid you not, a week later, texted me again. He goes, "I want to go shooting again." And I go, "You know what? This is working out great, man. I can just stroll on in and bring my buddy, and we can just." He made it. And the point of this whole story is that, as an experienced shooter, he's making me enjoy the sport of shooting even more, because I get to share it with him, and he's getting more knowledge, getting more, confidence, and he's a pretty good shot with it too. Yeah. So that's it. It's entertaining and fulfilling for the experienced shooter to take out new shooters is the whole point.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. For me, it really kind of validates my training and the hard work I've put into getting certificates or whatever.
Yeah.
To know that some of my labors that I performed are really bringing forth fruits now, and I have people that enjoy shooting. It, to me, taking a new shooter out is so much fun. It can be really stressful. Don't get me wrong. It can be very, very stressful.
Yeah.
But that's like what you were talking about when you talked to Danny before he shot for the first time. You brought him and said, "Hey, look, these are the safety rules. This is what you need to expect. Let's go through some of the guns, So you kind of prepped that new shooter before you even went out and pressed a trigger with live rounds.
Yeah, and we did.
And I think
we've talked about an episode. I keep talking about old episodes, but that's because we have like 80 something plus episodes now. But how to take a new shooter to the range and how to prep them, and that prep work really does pay off, into the future. So
absolutely.
But yeah, so that's if you are new to shooting and get somebody to take you shooting out at a range, or even out in the middle of nowhere. If you feel comfortable doing that, and or if you're really bold and you don't have anybody like that, you can take a class. Like we've talked about with Jessica and some other folks that at Independence we have the first shots class. Where if you've never shot a gun before, you'll shoot a couple of 22s and really get a great introduction into the world of firearms. Yeah.
And it can be intimidating for those first time shooters. It really can be scary.
Sure.
But with the First Shots program, that is obviously designed for people that have never fired a gun before. Or even if you come into Independence or some of the other ranges across the United States, usually I'm not going to say it's 100% right across the board, but any of those ranges, if they're worth a grain of salt, will be happy to spend some time with you and go through things with you and not treat you like an uneducated idiot. They should be willing to help you out. And if they don't, then email us.
Yeah,
we'll fix that problem.
We'll help you find another gun store that will. Because
that's right.
Unfortunately, not every gun store is as great as Independence. Sometimes it'd be nice if it was, but that's the reality. Yeah. But that's with any kind of hobby or sport. Sport, you're going to find different vibes in different places.
Well, you like to use the motorcycle analogy.
Yeah.
So I've never really ridden a motorcycle. So I could go to the Harley Davidson dealership in Laughlin, Nevada. I don't know if I'm going to get the same reception that if I went to you and said, "Hey, Mark, will you show me some things about riding a bike? I'm thinking about getting a bike. What can you help me out with?" It'd be a totally different experience.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that's the number one thing, is to find somebody that you trust that's willing to help you out.
Yeah,
on your journey.
And that knows you well and that is confident in firearms and whatnot, because that's really going to be your first step. But your second step really is, if you do find that it is for you and that you want to learn more about it, you really got to get educated. That's the first and foremost, especially if you're getting, going to concealed carry. I think in the majority of states, since all 50 states allow concealed carry in one way or the other, you've got to get some education in order to even get your concealed carry permit in most states. Not all, but most.
Yeah, some people might think, oh, you need to get the gun. That should be number 2, getting a gun. And I agree with you, Mark. The second thing is spend some money on education first.
Yeah.
Get to know, because again, when it comes to knowledgeable, helpful instructors, you're going to understand that there's a lot more to just carrying that gun. And in most states, like in Idaho's enhanced concealed carry class, you learn some of the responsibilities as a carry holder.
Yeah, and that's
that you may not expect.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say, is that there's a lot of things that you probably don't think about when you think about concealed carrying, and really a good concealed carry class that's worth its salt will talk about all the things that you have to consider, the laws, the theory behind concealed carrying, situational awareness, things like even as simple as where you can and can't carry and what you got to do. If you are running errands and maybe there's a store that doesn't allow guns, what to do in those situations, because that's stuff that, especially as a new shooter, or a new concealed carry person, you're not going to necessarily think about that stuff.
No. And it may not even cross your mind. You might think that, oh, well, I know that Utah has a concealed carry law, so I can just carry.
Right.
And not worry about even, or understand the private property laws. And you're right, you can get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and
go
ahead.
I was gonna say, I just thought of an interesting story, and I think this took place in Arizona. I was listening to Gun Talk, not necessarily to push another show, but I listened to that show a lot, and I'm pretty sure it was in Arizona, maybe it was Texas. This fella came over, he's good friends with this guy. This guy from the UK comes over and hangs out with him. They went to some like USPSA shoots or something. Anyway, the guy, the British fella felt like, hey, I need something. So the American said, hey, here's a loaner gun. Why don't you just carry this just in case?
This doesn't seem like a great idea.
But you're wrong. Like, that's what I thought. I thought, man, there's got to be some laws that are being violated. But in that, whatever state it was, in that particular state, the constitutional carry applied to anyone.
Really?
So he didn't break any laws. And it just so happened that night, of the same day that he lent his buddy this firearm, he had to use it. He had to use it in defense.
Really?
Some dude was trying to he didn't end up pulling the trigger, but he had the gun in his jacket or something, and the guy was walking really aggressive towards him, being super aggressive, and he just reached in his pocket, and it's just a real revolver, and he rotated that gun in his pocket, and the guy knew right away, hey, this is not my day.
Yeah,
and
that was enough to know. Yeah. That's crazy, man.
So,
Crazy how
so
that
knowing
works.
knowing your state laws is key. And that's why taking a class, finding somebody that's a competent educator will be invaluable.
Yeah, like I said, because you said because there's going to be rules that maybe your intuition says, oh, there's no way that could be, and then you find out, oh, that could be, or, like some states with constitutional carry, where you may not think you need that education or whatever, but there are still laws that apply to you, even if you're carrying constitutionally. Like for example, you can't carry in a federal building, or
Right.
if you have to go. Maybe there's a route that you take to go to work or something like that, or you have to drop your kids off at school or whatever, and those laws vary from state to state. So the education is key. And I think, to go back to the theme of being committed with carrying, is to make sure you keep up on those laws and, you think about those laws. Like we talked about before, like almost make a game of situational awareness, make a game of making sure you remember the laws. Like, hey, if I were to walk in here, or think about it, as a situation, if I had to go do this, or I got invited to go to this or whatever, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the commitment to carrying too.
If it's a prohibited building, then where are you going to put your firearm, or do you even take it with you at all? That kind of thing.
Right.
There's a lot more to it and that's why we wanted to bring this topic up, is there's so much more to being a committed concealed carry holder than just putting it in your pocket and leaving.
Yeah. And we've talked about it before, that just having a firearm is not a magic bullet, for no pun intended.
It's definitely an attorney attractant.
Yeah, that's very true.
If you're not careful.
So to go along with education, I actually put it in a separate category and I'll explain why, but training. I think education and training are a little bit different. Education, like I said, is more the theory and the rules and the laws and the situations. The theory-based stuff. Training is actually practicing with the firearm that you get, range time, instruction from instructors. And to go along with that, I think, is finding the right gun for you. Like you talked about, maybe getting that gun, a lot of people would think would be the second step. But I think, with how many places you can rent firearms from nowadays, I think that's really going to be, the really the next step is to find that right firearm for you.
Yeah. And buying the gun, it used to be that, kind of the idea was you go buy the gun first, you spend a lot of money, and if you don't like the gun, you're just kind of stuck with it, or maybe you can sell it to somebody else. So now where there are so many ranges that really cater to new shooters, and honestly, gun buyers that just buy way too many guns, there's a blessing of go. Yeah, they make it easier to get your fix, if you will, by being able to rent a few different guns. It really is a blessing to new shooters, because so many times, kind of going back to step one, we talk about finding somebody that's competent and able to help you out on your first time shooting. Unfortunately, what happens sometimes is it's usually a dude that has to be Mr. Cool. He'll pull out like his Desert Eagle.
Yeah, this is what you need to carry.
Try this, or a 357 Airweight Smith & Wesson or something, and it's doing harm, not doing good. And so that's like the other nice thing about going to a range is usually somebody at the range counter will ask you a few questions, just to figure out where you're at on your shooting abilities or experience.
Yeah, kind of gauge your confidence and skill level.
Yeah, and they'll help you out and get you into something that you may like or may not like. I've seen it 100 times where, I'll hand a gun to somebody that I think is perfect for them, and they come back and like, oh no, I did not like this gun, which, it happens. But it's way cheaper to spend 20, 30, even $100 at a range renting a bunch of different guns than it is spending $500 or $600 on something you're never going to use again. Right,
and I think we've talked about that before, where it's you have to. The best gun to have is the one that you will use. If you buy, I've seen it in RSOing in the range, with independent women where, if you get a somebody that comes in, they get a gun that, maybe was bought for them, or, they're borrowing it from somebody or something, to that degree, and they're just not comfortable. They're not confident with it. And then, the instructor says, well, give me a second. They go get a rental from the counter or whatever. And it changes their whole, outlook, not just on, that kind of gun, but I think guns in general,
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and it will make, like in the specific case of Daniel, it will make an experience that'll last forever, and then a new steward to the Second Amendment, or vice versa. It'll just make it such an unpleasant experience that they don't want to come shooting again.
Yeah, and that's doing a disservice to the whole gun industry.
It really is.
And that stuff. So
it really is.
But yeah, so training. Go ahead.
I was going to say, here's a fun little statistic when you talk about training and that kind of thing. This, and I'll probably share this article on our Facebook page. This is from Tier 3 Concealment. Tier 3 Tactical, sorry. This is an article they wrote, and this I think was back in March 17. So it's a couple years old. So some of the statistics are probably expired. But in one of their little statistics here on carrying, it says the experts were only 10% more accurate than novices between 3 and 15 feet.
Really?
Yeah.
10%.
10% more accurate. So, and then it talked about, coming out of the holster. It said, and this, they're really referencing for police officers and kind of comparing some of the civilian stuff. And one of their statistics here, it took officers 0.21 0.2 of a second on a simple scenario to present their firearm, or in a complex scenario, it was 0.8 of a second. So that's really fast.
Yeah, that's pretty fast.
But that's just them making the decision to bring their gun out. Okay. Now think about how long it takes the average person to get their gun out of the holster. We're talking probably between
second and a half.
Between, let's just say, the sound of the beep and the gun going off, you're going to be probably a fairly competent shooter. Well, not a novice. Somebody that shoots frequently, you're probably going to be about a second and a half.
Yeah, right? I was going to say a trained, experienced one, about a second and a half, maybe 2 seconds, somewhere in that realm.
So Jerry Michelet can bring it out in less than a second and put a round on target, right?
Right.
So if you're thinking that it takes a cop 0.8 of a second to make the decision, and almost a second and a half to actually bring the gun out. Now that's a reaction time, not an action time. Right. He's already 2 seconds behind a scenario.
And that's a long time.
So you think about,
in that kind of situation.
It's a very long time. So think about us on the civilian side that doesn't train. We're talking about getting the training and the education. If we're not honing our skills, that reaction time plus the holster time plus the time that bullet's on target, we could be up to 3 seconds, and that is way too late.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Okay, so I'm going to count 3 seconds right now. You ready? 1, 2, 3. That was actually technically 4 seconds, so forgive me, but still, the fact remains that was 4 seconds, and that even counting that out seemed like forever to me.
Yeah, but in the heat of the moment, it's not going to be that. It's not going to feel that slow.
No, there's going to be a lot going
all
on.
All that stuff has to happen, and we have to finally get that gun on target. That's way too long, and that's a reaction time. And what I mean by reaction and action is the bad guys performing the action, and we have to counteract that with a reaction.
Right, and you're noticing that something is happening, and you're making that decision.
So you're always behind the 8 ball. So get good, competent training and do a lot of dry fire practice, but get the right kind of instruction on dry fire practice too, so you don't get hurt.
Yeah, and even if you are experienced, I mean, you're going back to commitment to carrying, is that you are practicing regularly, and you're practicing not only holster draw but dry firing, and you're practicing, with different cover garments, and because maybe your work clothes are different than your streetwear during the weekends or something like that. And, maybe you have like a cover garment on that you're wearing, during the weekends, but during the week you're wearing, a shirt and a tie or something like that. And you're going to have to think about what those different situations are, where you're going to have to unholster and present your firearm if you're going to, you know what I mean? So you really have to think about that if you're committed to really practice and dry fire, regularly.
Yeah. And like I said, get that good training on dry fire practice.
Yeah, that too. And that goes along with instruction. I think even if you are an experienced concealed carry holder, taking classes multiple times or just taking refresher courses, you might learn something. Well, you will learn something. I'll almost guarantee it. But
every time you go to a class, you'll learn something.
Yeah. But even star athletes practice the basics how many times, or, world-class shooters practice the basics, thousands, hundreds of thousands of times.
Right.
So if you're carrying something that's going to, that's a last resort to protect your life that may, take the life of somebody else, you better be competent with it.
Absolutely.
So the next thing I had, actually, it's a great segue talking about clothing, was, you have to, do you dress around the gun, or do you, it's a personal choice thing, but, you have to think about concealed means concealed, which means you're not going to be making sure that nobody's going to be able to see that firearm, or notice it, obviously.
Honestly, I think this is where the true commitment of carry, it gets dropped, is when it comes to clothing. I think that's where people give up.
Interesting.
So, and this is just my perspective. Obviously, I don't have anything to back up this idea, but summertime comes along, you're carrying your Glock 19 or your a PPK or something, and I guess the PPK is a little smaller. No, that's the PPC, right? I don't remember.
The CCP,
whatever,
is what you're thinking of.
The CCP is the smaller one, but so you're carrying a mid-frame size gun, 19 rounds ish,
right?
But then man, I just want to wear basketball shorts or whatever. I don't want to carry. It's just more of a pain in the butt. Or maybe you're getting a little thick from the holidays,
putting on your winter weight.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think this is where the commitment disappears, is when it comes to apparel. Just because we don't want to buy new clothes, or maybe it's going to look tacky. Maybe our stuff's too tight and we don't want to print or whatever. But if in my perspective, my firearm is a life-saving device, and I actually have to go through this probably every 2 or 3 weeks, the same conversation, with my wife, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Because she's like, oh, why are you taking that? You always have it with you. What's the point? And it's because I want to keep you safe. Like, why do we have a fire extinguisher in the kitchen? Why do we wear our seatbelts? It's all about mitigating the worst. And so I hear it a lot. I get it a lot. And it's just the way it is. But I don't really, I wear baggy pants and stuff. And I'm not a thug by any means.
You just like to be comfortable.
I make sure that my clothes are going to fit comfortably with my commitment to carry. And that's just the way it is. Sometimes, and obviously in the wintertime, it does get a little easier to carry because you can cover up with an extra sweatshirt or whatever. But if you just got to think about what you're going to do, or what you want to carry, so you can get your clothes to coincide with that.
Yeah, and I think part of that,
if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I think it does, but I think part of it also comes down to holster choice as well. You know what I mean? There's all different kinds of holsters, all different ways of carrying. So I think if you're able to, it might not be that you're able to dress 100% how you want all the time if you're, committed to carrying, but I think you can make some compromises between the two, or, find something that works a little bit better than the other, that, you're still going to be comfortable wearing. So, and like you said, yeah, it's a lot easier in the winter with more layers and, and being able to wear a jacket and stuff. But, you got to think about that too, is you don't want to look conspicuous. If you're the guy, in the middle of the summer wearing a jacket or whatever, that's going to make you look more suspicious than any kind of printing would. And then, on top of that,
think about what's that lady that sells the concealed carry clothing for? We used to carry it in the women's, in our ladies stuff.
I know who you're talking about, but the name is escaping me.
Deanne Adams, is that what it is?
Sure, we'll go with that.
Like that. She may, well, whatever. I'm sure a lot of you guys may have seen some of her videos on Facebook or whatever, some of her product floating around. She can walk around in like a very formal skirt or whatever, and you would have no idea that she's carrying a firearm.
Yeah, and I think part of that comes with experience too.
Yeah. So you're right. So what it comes down to is that there's definitely a carry option out there for no matter what you want to wear.
Yeah, 100%.
There's something out there. There's a product available for you, so you don't have to leave your concealed carry at home.
Right. And if you're committed to carrying, you'll think about all those different situations that you're in, whether you're going to the gym or going shopping or whatever, and you'll be able to figure out a way to make that work.
Yeah, it might get expensive. You might have to put out a couple bucks to get a good holster.
Yeah.
But it's cheaper than a funeral.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. And that's really what I was going to say about holsters and stuff, is that you really can't, rent those or try those out, unfortunately. If you know somebody maybe, who does concealed carry, you can maybe try theirs on just to kind of see how they fit and whatnot. But, it's really, you have to kind of go with, I don't know. For me, I always figured just go with the best that I can find, that I can afford, and go from there.
Yeah, and you'll know once you start carrying in the manner or position that you want to carry, you'll know that, man, that works, but it's not the most comfortable. You'll end up with somewhere a little bag or a box full of holsters.
Yeah, you'll have a drawer or something like that. Yeah, and you know what? You're gonna have to spend some money.
That's just. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just part of the natural progression of carrying a gun is you realize, oh, there's something better, maybe I'll get this different holster. Or honestly, one of the best things you can do is invest in a good belt, which could totally change the holster that you thought sucked.
Yeah,
you just need a good stable belt.
That's a huge thing. Yeah, that's a big thing and that goes along with, I think, considerations too, is not only, thinking about the kind of gun you're carrying, but the holster and the clothing that you're wearing, as well as the belt, as well as, constantly reevaluating, your setup and how you can maybe change it or make it better or whatever. Because that's the one thing too that we've talked about a bunch, but I still, am constantly amazed by is the innovations and the creativity of the gun world and how many new things come out. Not all of them are great, but at least there's a lot of new concepts, and it's something that works for more people.
And that's kind of what we see in the market is that the guns don't necessarily change. That construct is pretty consistent, has been for 100 years for the most part, especially with handguns. They really haven't changed much. But the accessories, the holsters, the clothing, those have changed exponentially over the last even 10 years. They've changed a bunch.
Yeah.
So it's not impossible to look fashionable and to be comfortable while you're carrying.
Yeah. And just look online. You're able to find clothes and holsters and belts aplenty and lots of videos. I think that's one of the best ways to check things out. It still gets me every time. You're watching a YouTube video on concealed carry or something like that, and maybe some YouTuber's talking about his setup or whatever, and you go, oh yeah, and here's my setup right here, and he maybe pulls his his holster off of his belt or whatever, and still gets me, oh, I didn't even think about him actually carrying in this video, and him taking his holster out from under his belt. I didn't even see it at all. And so that was kind of made me turn the corner on printing, and that if you do it right, nobody's going to notice. And the other thing,
you're never going to. Oh, go ahead. I'll let you finish. Sorry.
I was just going to say, and that if you don't notice,
really good at interrupting each other.
If you don't know, no, you're good, man. If you don't notice, that, what am I like? If you don't notice in a YouTube video about guns that somebody's carrying, like imagine how many people like in the general public are not going to notice.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to get to when I kept rudely interrupting you.
That's okay.
You might see that what you consider printing, but probably 99% of the people out there are never even going to know. Even gun guys or gals, they're not going to really notice.
Yeah.
So don't be scared to kind of experiment and try things out. But please, for the love that all is holy, don't spend like $10 on a holster. We talk about good holster selection.
Yeah.
There are a few brands, and there are probably people that know what I'm talking about out there, that they're just complete garbage. And they're not real. Usually they're really soft, kind of flimsy, and
maybe nylon.
And you can buy them and you buy them at big box stores with, next to whatever.
And it fits every gun known to man.
And they are complete garbage. Please spend a little extra money. You can get great holsters for under $60.
Oh, for sure.
And you might as well step away from the $9.99 gun bucket, one size fits all sock.
Yeah, you do not
go
want
for
that.
Something else.
This is a perfect time to plug the Ultimate Hybrid holster.
Yes, I would think so. So our buddy Nick, who's been on the show a couple times, him and Terry have come up with that concept of the Ultimate Hybrid, which we just badmouth nylon holsters, but these are a good sturdy nylon holster.
Well, no, I wouldn't say it's nylon. It's Kydex, right?
Oh, I guess it is a Kydex shell on the outside.
See, it's not nylon. It's Kydex, and then it's memory foam. That's what it was.
Foam on the inside. You're right. My bad.
That's okay.
But it doesn't collapse. It's comfortable. It conforms to your side. And honestly, I've talked to some gun guys that say, "Oh, those are they suck. Don't even waste your money on them." But it's an affordable means to carry almost anything that you may have in your gun safe. And they make them inside or outside the waistband. And some of them have the Ulti clip, which, if you know what that is an awesome tuckable option.
Yeah, you don't even really need a belt for it if you have strong enough pants.
Yeah. There is stuff out there, and they're made in Meridian. So why would you complain?
Yeah, exactly.
Right here in Idaho.
But yeah, it's a good way to see how different guns carry, because it does fit, I think that's like 75 or 100 different kinds of guns. But the big thing that separates them is the retention. That's the big thing that you want to look for in a holster. Obviously, the difference between the gun bucket that Steve's talking about is there's no retention there. I mean, you might have a strap that goes over it, over the back strap or something, but
made out of the highest quality snaps.
Yeah, the big thing you're looking for is retention, and that's what's cool about the Ultimate Hybrid holster. So nice plug for Mr. Hoffer there.
Yeah, and I have a few different of his Hoftac line holsters that I absolutely love. In fact, I just talked to him about another holster for something else that, well, we won't get into that right now. But
he can do it all. For anything that might be in my safe. Yeah, exactly.
But anyway.
So that's important. Clothing, holsters, belts, everything. You want to consider everything, and you want to be constantly reevaluating, your setup and how you can make it better and, more comfortable, because also the more comfortable you can make it, the more you're going to carry.
Yeah, the more you're willing to be carried. And with that holster and the considerations of what you're going to be wearing, always, always, always think about carrying another magazine for that firearm,
right?
Or speed loaders or whatever you might be carrying. You got to consider carrying more than just the one magazine or one cylinder full of cartridges. Because, in all honesty, your chances of needing to use that gun is low. We kind of know that already, but the amount of cartridges it may take to stop a threat may be more than what the capacity of your firearm has. So,
especially if there's multiple people.
Absolutely. So consider ways of carrying another magazine too, or two mags, whatever.
Yeah.
Or not even that. That might not be like, there might be a bunch of bad guys, but maybe that magazine will fail.
Yeah. And, it could be. That's totally possible.
So just think about that too when it comes to clothing choice and holster choice.
Well, and we've talked about before that the magazine is the most probable thing that's going to fail in a firearm. So, I'm of the philosophy that if you can conceal carry a handgun somewhere on your person, you can conceal carry an extra mag as well.
Well, for example, today at church,
yeah,
I carried with me my firearm with its magazine. I carry a small gun, but I had 19 rounds on me,
right,
on my suit, and you couldn't tell. So, at least, hopefully, nobody could tell.
I imagine with your experience, nobody can tell.
Yeah, so it's out there. Like, you can do it, but you need to make the commitment to carry an extra mag or more ammunition
and do the research. And there are holsters out there that, come with basically an extra mag right there with you. So you have, your gun on one side and your mag on the other side, and you're ready to go.
Especially if you're appendix carrying, I think the mag caddy attached to the holster is perfect because it's right there in your workspace.
And it kind of balances everything out too, I think.
Yeah. There are some of the other holsters that I wouldn't really, if it's strong side or whatever, the mag on that side is probably not the best idea.
Right.
But it's better than nothing.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, well, let's move on from clothing and all that kind of stuff. I thought this was an important one to bring up is demeanor.
Mm-hmm.
And your mindset when you carry.
So where my mind first went with demeanor, and we've talked about this before, it is the guys walking around open carrying their AR-15s.
Right.
Now, to me, that attitude and their demeanor towards the police officers, to me, all they're trying to do is to embarrass the cops that may not understand all the laws. And they're thinking that they're proving a point. Well, it's just the Second Amendment. I can carry wherever I want.
Second Amendment audit, bro.
And that's absolutely true. And I'm glad that we live in a country where they can open carry something like that. But they're jackasses. They're morons. They're wasting the police time with something that they could be taking care of somewhere else. And they're really not proving anything.
Yeah, and you're kind of doing the Second Amendment a disservice, really. I think we're in agreement on that. You're making people uncomfortable.
I think so. So how that goes in with concealed carry is you need to be respectful to the laws. Now we can go through federal carry, regulations or private property if you want. There are some gray areas in there.
Yeah.
When it comes to, in my perspective, when it comes to private property, concealed means concealed. And I'm not going to say anything more than that.
I think that's fair.
But if we're going on federal property or in hospitals or schools, don't. Yeah. You're not doing the Second Amendment any favor, and you're probably going to go to jail, and you could honestly lose the ability to carry a firearm
or even own a firearm.
Yeah, it's not worth the risk. Just respect those laws and be respectful to law enforcement that are trying to do their jobs.
Well, and the other thing too.
That's my rant about that.
Well, I was going to go a different direction too. Is it how you treat other people? You have to be respectful to everyone. You can't get angry with anyone. You can't start a fight or start an argument with somebody or get into a road rage kind of deal because you are the one with the firearm on your hip. And, if it escalates and, you have to draw your firearm to save your life, but you were the one who initiated the conflict, you're going to be in a world of problems.
Yeah, that is not a vigilante card. That is not a I'm a better than you person card. It's quite the opposite. It's you're held to a different standard. You're an example both to the Second Amendment and pro-gun, and you'll be held as an example to the anti-gunners. So you got to be really thinking about how you act when you carry, and honestly, when you don't carry. If you have a permit or whatever, if you're just a gun owner, you need to really think about how you react and treat people.
Yeah, I think that's well
said.
Plus,
it's just a decent thing to do, anyways.
Just be a decent.
I don't even know why that. I don't know why that even has to go on through a whole rant. You're here for a reason. We're all here together. None of us are getting out alive, so there's no need to be a dick about it.
Well, and you kind of bring up an interesting thing too. Is that I've always found myself to be a nicer person when I am carrying because I know I have to be,
Sure.
But it kind of sounds counterintuitive, but it really does kind of make you think twice about what really matters and what doesn't. And if somebody cuts you off in traffic or is maybe rude to you, it's a lot easier to let it slide off your back for some reason. At least for me.
Yeah. And the other thing I'm going to say about that is just because I'm polite and respectful and courteous when I'm carrying a gun doesn't mean I'm going to act the same way if I have to deploy the gun.
Yeah, you don't have to necessarily mistake kindness for weakness.
Yeah, and I've role played a lot of that in my mind, and I think my family understands that too. Like, if somebody was to break into my house at night, or even wherever I'm at, I'm probably not going to be the person that they're used to seeing.
Right.
Just because I need to create fear in the bad guy's eyes too. And so, and I'm not saying that concealed carry holders have to feel that way or be that way or expect to be super vicious when they have to deploy their firearm. But to me, it's just a tactic that I choose to employ. But like I said, that is not a necessity for carrying a gun.
Right. I think another thing that, with regards to demeanor is situational awareness, and we've talked that one kind of to death. But obviously that's a requirement. You have to know what's going on around you at all times.
Pat McNamara dropped a video yesterday or today. That dude's my spirit animal, I tell you. And he was talking about like, just in reference to driving your car and you're basically, you're in charge of your own executive security. That's what he always talks about.
Right.
So as a driver, especially if you have passengers in the car, you're not fiddling with the radio or you're not checking your Twitter feed or whatever. You are solely focused on making sure that those people in your car are getting where they need to go alive. And the same thing goes if you're at the mall or at the grocery store or whatever. Your job is to make sure that your loved ones are going to be safe and getting to where they need to go alive. And part of that situational awareness is you're not dicking around on your phone. And I fall prey to that too. Sometimes I think as a society, we're really involved in our cell phone use.
Yeah, it happens to everybody.
And we get way sucked in. I did it at the mall yesterday.
Yeah.
And it just happens. And we just need to discipline ourselves a little bit better to not be that way, because we don't want to get caught off guard and we don't want to have to lengthen our reaction time like we talked about a little bit ago, that we could have really shrunk down if we were just paying attention.
Yeah, because you can get out of a situation, if your situational awareness is high, you might be able to get out of a situation or prevent a situation where, you can get away from something before you even maybe need to get to that point of drawing your firearm.
Well, think about that British guy we were just talking about.
Right.
He had the wherewithal to know that there was a threat coming at him, and he didn't even pull his gun. He could have had a roll of toothpaste in his pocket for all the bad guy knew, but that he understood that was there if he needed it, and he paid attention enough to know that there was a threat coming at him.
Yep. And
where he could have been watching his shoes while he was walking and then walked right into a problem.
Yep. And that something as simple as that can save your life. So
yeah, we know it happens a lot every year.
Yeah. Millions of times. So that's all I really got with my list of being committed to carrying and staying committed to carrying. What else you got?
Well, I mentioned this article from Tier 3, and like I said, I'll share it to Facebook on our Facebook feed. But there's some kind of interesting statistics that they actually back up with some links to their sources. But something to think about here was under their distance and times header was the most, and these are obviously geared towards police gunfights, but they say the deadliest and most common are within 3 to 6 feet. So that's really close.
That's very close.
And
yeah.
We talk about training and spending time with your carry gun, that's arm's distance away, or a little bit farther. So that's fat. Like, in order to react,
Yeah.
that's incredibly fast. So you got to really, really game plan it with yourself and your skills and hone them down. The other thing is too, another one of their things is 60% of the police shootings occur at night in the darkness. So
that's the majority.
Maybe you're, yeah, by far. So when you're working late or you work weird hours or you're at a movie, before you get to where the sun is going down, maybe you should make your route planned ahead of time, so you know that you're going to be safe to where you're going.
Yeah, and then you get into the consideration of you should be carrying a flashlight of some kind or another. But do you want to carry a weapon mounted light? Do you want night sights? You have to take those things into consideration depending on your situation, your lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So very important.
Some of the other things they were talking about is you're far more likely to get shot if you're standing still. So, learning how to move or how to get to cover or concealment or whatever, that could be a lifesaver for you too. And that comes with some of the more higher level classes normally that you would take, learning how to move and shoot and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
but that's that commitment to training is building on the skills that you have.
Yeah. Don't just take, and I know we've talked about this so much, don't just take the concealed carry class and think, oh, well, I'm done. I'm trained, because you haven't even scratched the surface.
Yeah.
That is, and if you really, really want to understand what it's like in an active scenario, do some force on force training, and everything you thought that was going to work, you realize completely doesn't work or sort of worked, and you need to hone it down.
Yeah. You'll eat some humble pie on that one. And like one thing I'll say too is I don't think I want to make sure that you understand, like, we're not talking about like taking a class every single weekend. I mean, obviously finances and time
if you could, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
I don't think most people would.
Yeah. I mean, ammo costs money, paying for classes costs money, and you have only so much time between work and family and all that kind of stuff. But, I'd say even quarterly or every 6 months, or even if you can only do once a year, I mean, that's going to be better than nothing.
Yeah. And I think I also need to understand, like, I know we do this for the range and we teach at the range and all sorts of stuff. It has nothing to do with revenue for the store or for the academy or anything. It really is a life-saving skill, much like, I would consider first aid or anything like that. Obviously, those are life-saving skills. Learning how to responsibly use and carry a firearm is a life-saving skill, because it could be your life or somebody that you're very close to, or maybe a complete stranger that you might have to save,
right?
Using a firearm. So it's, like I said, to me, I consider it a life-saving skill.
Well, I even told my friend Daniel the other day, because
excuse me.
Oh, you're good. I trained him. I trained him just on the basics and the safety, and just from what my limited knowledge of the training that I've gotten about how to improve your shooting. I said, but if you have any questions for anybody or whatever, I said, man, take a class. You'll learn, in 10 minutes what I've taught you in 3 hours, and you'll learn 10 times the amount of stuff that I've taught you, and it'll resonate with you, more efficiently or in a different way. And, it's like you said, it's not just about the shop. It's about just being a trained firearms owner.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think one more thing that would be really important to understand as the commitment to concealed carry is make a commitment. And we've talked about this before too, is to bring other people into the fold, I guess, as far as creating new shooters and developing new stewards of the Second Amendment, because we're constantly under attack. The negative stuff happens so much. I mean, there was another school shooting in California just this week, and tragic and awful as that is, our rights are constantly under attack. So we need good, competent people that have a voice and that are normal.
upstanding citizens.
Because it's everybody's right. It's not just a few of us that deserves it, right? It's every citizen in the United States deserves that right. And so we need to make sure that everyone understands the importance of that right. So take people shooting. Once you start learning how to shoot and you like it, invite more friends.
Yeah, I mean, I consider it just paying it forward. And like I said, I mean, I think, one of the things that I really enjoy from shooting now is taking new people shooting and watching them get excited about it and enjoy the sport and want to go again and again. And it's like, yeah, man, I'll take you as many times as you want to go. Great excuse for me to go shooting no matter what. So
you buy the ammo, I'll take the guns.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, you got anything else?
I don't.
I think we covered it pretty well. If you have any questions for us, obviously you can let us know and email us podcast@iishooting.com or get at us at Facebook and Instagram at Range Minded Podcast. We'll post that. What is it? Tier 3?
Yeah, Tier 3 tactical.
Yeah, we'll make sure that gets posted.
This is an old article, but it's still relevant.
Cool. Yeah. So let's do that, and we'll get you some supplemental reading there. But you can always get a hold of us as well. So
awesome.
Cool. Well, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Okay, guys. Appreciate it. Be safe out there.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Range Minded. Find us online at Range Minded Podcast on Facebook, or send us an email at podcast@iishooting.com. We're always happy to get feedback, episode suggestions, whatever you want to send us, really. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much wherever else you get your podcasts from. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.